All right, back once again. It's time to unlearn what you have learned. And today I'm gonna be looking at gig work. I came across this video. I watched this guy's channel, so credit goes to him, Mr. Bet on You. Check out his channel if you'd like to see more in depth, with the situation and what the things he's talking about and experiences and all that good stuff. But anyways, let's get into it.
I'm at the point where I need to get a real job because
and this is the only thing you have bringing in the money, go get you a part-time job.
Oh no, the gig economy is collapsing. I'm getting into my office, but the gig economy has collapsed. We can no longer make money.
All right, I have to stop it right there. I notice a lot of people usually always say, get a real job, or I have to find a real job, or so on and so forth. It really depends on the person and how you're working it. You have to figure out what works for you in your market as far as what you're doing and how you're doing it. I'll mention more stuff on that, let the video play through. But it's funny to me when people say a real job, because there's people out there that have, they're influencers, they're YouTube, they're people in the executive situation, and you could pretty much say the same thing about these kinds of jobs. You could say that that's not a real job, but then again, we already know it depends on how much money you make, which is how successful you are in the situation. So once again, a job is something that you do. You get you earn from that, and you get paid. As long as you're getting paid, that is a real job. If you're not getting paid, that is not a real job. And there's, obviously certain situations that happen like that. There's plenty of places where people do stuff for free and they don't earn any money. Well, guess what? In a way, it is a job, but you're not getting paid for it. So is that a real job, or is it not? Do you see what I'm saying? So you can look at all these different, scenarios and situations when it comes to working certain jobs and, gig work and whatever else. There's people out there who just go out and cut grass and everything else. You're going to say that's not a real job? When it comes down to is you have to say it the way it needs to be said. A real job pretty much doesn't consist of working for a company. You can do whatever you, as long as you're earning money. The fact of the matter is you're not working a job where you have to go somewhere for 8, 12, hours a day, whatever it is. And obviously everyone will say, okay, well, that's a real job because you're hired by someone else. Let's be straight about it. Sometimes it don't work out like that. Not everybody wants to work for somebody else. That's why you see all these people finding other avenues to make money. But once again, those things are considered as not a real job. Being an influencer is not a real job. Being a TikToker is not a real job. Being a YouTuber is not a real job. You see what I'm saying? So that's where this whole situation gets confusing, because people keep saying it's not a real job, but there's plenty of places out there that are not real jobs. And people are successful at doing it. Now, of course, no one's saying, oh, that's not a real job, but guess what? Here we are. As long as you're making money, once again, it is a real job because you're getting paid for your service. No matter how many hours you work, no matter what you do, as long as you're earning money, it's a real job. Let's continue.
Let's look at a couple TikTokers, their take on some of what the gig economy has become, what it's evolved to, the changes. The gig economy has not collapsed. It has restructured. It has changed. And for those that haven't changed with it, your experience is very, very different than mine. Welcome back to Mrbetonyou. So let's not sugarcoat anything here. The gig economy can be frustrating. It's not for everybody. I've always said that. I've always thought that. I've always believed that. This line of work, especially if you're doing it full time, is not for many, and I don't recommend it. But it doesn't mean you can't still sustain it and make good money. The gig economy has definitely changed. It's not collapsing, it's growing.
This week, we're hosting a free trading and investing workshop right here in Scottsdale. Inside this workshop, you'll...
It's not collapsing, it's growing. Let's look at some of these videos. I'm going to react to it, get your opinions as well. Let's get into it.
What happens when Uber says, okay, no more drivers? We're cutting drivers. What happens when they say we're cutting Uber Eats delivery people? People in this economy are too dependent on gig work. Uber Eats, DoorDash, other Postmates, other delivery services. These jobs that people heavily depend on, once they're torn away, what will they do? We always think we have the ability to go make some money on the side. I'll just jump in the car, do some Uber rides and come back. What happens when they say no more? And all you have is your job or lack thereof. It's going to be a mess. So once that starts falling apart, I think we're really going to start seeing some pain in the economy. But listen, I don't know when that's going to happen. I think it's going to happen soon, 8 months, 9 months from now, but that's all I can say.
So that video right there was made 2.5 years ago. Things have changed, but it hasn't gone anywhere. What will you do once Uber and this guy's saying once Uber and all these other apps turn off and they don't want you, you can't work anymore? Still a viable option for millions. 2.5 years ago, that video was made. Let's continue.
Still out here doing it full time, let me know in the comments, but it's getting rough. Go ahead and figure your situation out, or if, you might got other situations with money coming in and it still works good out with you, cool. But if you're actually doing this full time, and this is the only thing you have bringing in the money, go get you a part-time job. Or go get you a full-time job, because gig work is dying. I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all watch a lot of other gig workers, and you're starting to see either they were full-time.
So at this point, I really don't care what nobody say about the gig economy anymore. When I was just a DoorDasher, I did not understand the power of the gig economy, but now I do. And I didn't really know the benefits and the financial possibilities of being a courier. Now, let me get into it, because a lot of people have a misconception of gig work and that you're pretty much going to be chasing all the time. When you learn to lock in courier contracts, all of that stops.
So what I really like about this woman's take is she realized, after doing some DoorDash and on-demand apps, well, I don't have to just do these. Yeah, this sucks, but does it mean the gig economy is collapsing? No, it just means I need to go to try to find other opportunities. Try to bid my...
No, he's right. Once again, what I told you earlier about, things work for certain people in certain ways. You just got to figure out what's going on in your market. And like I said, this is my opinion. I'm reacting to his video. He's more knowledgeable than I am. I've been watching this guy for a couple years on, different stuff, crazy situations. He's been through ups and downs and whatever else. And yeah, like I said, check out his channel, and you can see for yourself. But I'm just reacting to this because obviously I used to do gig work too, and there's times where I made a good amount of money, and there was times where I didn't. It just depended on the day. Some days were better than others. Weekends you think be a little bit better. Sometimes the weekend wasn't good. It just depends on what you get. Well, let's continue.
With other companies, become a courier with other apps, still in the gig economy. I love this. I've been talking about that for years. I love that TikTok because she offers a solution to a problem, and it works for her. Interesting. So is it collapsing or no?
If you're an Uber driver, I need you to listen to what I'm gonna tell you right now. Stop it. Stop what you're doing. It's not good anymore. It's garbage. You could literally go and work minimum wage in a third world country, and you'll be better off than Uber and Lyft driving. And I'm not just talking about the financials. I'm talking about the toll that it takes on your mental health and your psyche.
He looks...
See, like I said, it doesn't work the same way for everybody, and I had to figure out a way that made it work for me. I listened to a lot of videos on different creators and so on and so forth to figure out how to attack the situation when I would go out. And usually I would only go out in the evening time, like during dinner time and stuff like that. I start around 4, 5 o'clock, get to a certain section or area that I like to work in, or I felt that was profitable. There are other situations that happen, and sometimes you can take an order and it's a really good order, but it's like way out in the boonies somewhere. Now, in this case, I've had that situation happen to me, but ended up going to an area that was more profitable. Now, once again, in most cases, I wouldn't take it, just depending on how much I was getting out of the order. If it was, if it was worth making the money, and how early it was in my start, because I'd also go by time range. Where am I at? What time is it? Would this be beneficial to me to go in this direction? So I would think about all those different things, and you can't really call it right all the time. So you have to kind of experience it. And there were some situations where I actually experienced those things, and I was like, okay, you know what, this ain't gonna work. I can't do this again. And there was other situations where I was like, wow, if I get something that takes me to that area, I'll go ahead and take it, because last time, or pretty much every time or whatever, the situation has been beneficial, and it worked out, and I made a lot of money. I mean, heck, I would work from, like I said, I started at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and depending on how busy or how what was going on, I would work to sometimes almost 10 o'clock at night, and I'd be way far from home and everything else. And the other thing I would try to do also would be to work my way home, so I'd be making money on the way home, because I would drive to a different area. So when the pretty much 8 o'clock hour, 9 o'clock hour, depending on how busy it was or wherever I was, that was it was beneficial for me. When I start heading back home, I will start taking orders that only lead me back in that direction, and depending on how much they are and so on and so forth, or how tired I am or how I feel, I would base that on what I would take pretty much going back home. And sometimes I'd be going back home, and I would hit one after another, and it would just be, and I would just keep taking them, because I'm like, okay, as long as they keep bringing me decent orders, I'm gonna keep going. So I would keep going and stuff like that. And one night my wife she called me, or she texted me, and she's like, oh, is everything all right? Are you good? Are you coming home soon? I'm like, babe, it's like really busy. I'm making some good money, so I'm gonna stay out as long as possible. If I just keep making money, but I'm on my way home, I'm just making money on the way home. And she always said that was really smart. Well, once again, that's how you do things. Depending on your area, where you start, where you're gonna end, you kind of gotta, you gotta strategize and improvise the situation in order to make it work for you. Now, I'm not going to go through this entire video. I just wanted to show you some, just a little snippets of it and whatever else, and react to what he is saying. You can watch this whole video on his channel for yourself. But as you can see, a lot of people will say the gig economy is dying. Well, it's not really dying. It's just changing. It's evolving into something else. And I've seen other videos where people were saying who are taking these orders, like it'd be like $3 for like 11 miles or 20 miles. I've got plenty of those too. And I was like, who was taking these? Like, there's no way I would take these. You know what I'm saying? Because the tip would have to match. And there's no tip showing, a match to this situation to where I would want to take it. So once again, it's all about how you do things. I can't, like I said, what works for me might not work for the next person. What works for that person may not work for me. So I just kind of strategize my own situation to figure out and listen to other people to see what they're doing, and then go from there. But in most cases, like I said, I'm not going to go into the whole situation on how you should do it. But once again, the one thing I will tell you is you have to figure it out for yourself. And you can still, make money. It just depends on what time you go out. And if you're trying to do this, freaking, full time, you gotta have your little breaks in between, because you gotta see, they give you maps to show you the busiest times and whatever else when they get orders. That's what you want to base it off of. In the morning times, you want to be out there, probably about 6 o'clock, and then you're gonna work probably until like 10 o'clock. Take a break to about 11, 12 o'clock, start doing those lunch orders. Actually, probably earlier than that. You want to start, before, probably an hour to 2 hours before that, but make sure you have a break in between. You can stop around, 6 to 8, and then 9 to 12, and then going from there. And then from, I say 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock is pretty much the in between, because people are still in between at work and going home. So you won't really start receiving orders for that dinner time until after 5 o'clock. So you want to make sure after 5 o'clock, you're already locked in and ready to go so you can get that nighttime stuff. So like I said, that's just my opinion. That's how, I do things. I try to make sure I work that out as far as, my timing, the area I'm working in, and so on and so forth. So most of the time I always worked at night. That always was the most beneficial time for me. I actually tried working other times, sometimes early in the morning, sometimes in the midday, and it just really depends. Midday I really didn't do well because my timing was off. I didn't start in time. So once again, it just depends. Now today, it could be a totally different story. And also we have people out here who are making these orders and everything else, and they're not really, putting to, they're expecting someone to take it. And in most cases, that's because a lot of these people will, they won't do the, stop to stop to stop. They work by the hour. So they just take whatever because they're working by the hour. And once again, these people are getting their orders fulfilled, and they're not putting anything on it. And I get, hey, people want to save money and everything else. Hey, I get that. But once again, you're paying for a service. If you want that, what's it called? If you want that convenience is going to cost you, plain and simple. Otherwise, your food will be still sitting there. You won't get your order. You'll see sometimes someone will try to, accidentally, I've done that many times before, where I accidentally pressed it because I was trying to figure something else out, end up taking an order that I didn't want to take, but because of what was going on and what I was doing on my phone, I ended up accidentally pressing the button, and I had to cancel the order and so on and so forth. So once again, it just really depends, and you can still do that and stop calling it not a real job. Just say, hey, maybe I need an hourly job. But once again, guess what? They offer, it's just funny to me, they offer you an hourly wage, to do it that way. So you can do it by order or you can do it hourly. It's up to you. But like I said, that's just where I'm coming from with it. And I happened to come across this video, and I was watching it this morning, and I was like, you know what? I gotta react to, this situation and what he's saying, to hopefully help people out there. So, it's all about you, your timing, so on and so forth. You just have to kind of improvise and figure things out for yourself. Thank you for your time. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm out. Peace.